Sir, step away from the child. The command cut through the bustling atmosphere of Central Park's lakeside cafe. Dominic froze, his hand still extended toward his 4-year-old son's chocolate ice cream cone. "Excuse me?" he asked, turning to face 2 uniformed officers approaching their table. "We received a report of a suspicious adult with a child," the shorter officer stated, hand resting on her belt. "We need to verify your relationship to the boy." The cafe fell silent. Patrons lowered their conversations to whispers, some already recording with their phones. In the corner, a white woman with a designer handbag and perfectly manicured nails watched intently, her phone still in her hand. "Daddy, what's happening?" little Theo asked, his pale blue eyes wide with confusion. If you believe no father should have to defend his right to be with his child based on the color of his skin, like this video to help more people see these hidden injustices. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for powerful stories of justice that make a difference. Dominic's pulse quickened, but his face remained calm. Years of navigating these situations had taught him to control his reactions. "This is my son," he said evenly. "What exactly is the issue here?" The taller officer shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, we're just following protocol based on a concerned citizen's report." "A report claiming what?" Dominic asked, though he already knew the answer. The cafe seemed to hold its collective breath. "Sir, we're just doing our job," the officer replied, avoiding the question. Dominic knelt beside Theo, whose ice cream was now dripping onto the table. "Remember what we talked about, buddy? Sometimes people make mistakes about our family, but we know who we are, right?" Theo nodded solemnly. "We're Theo and Daddy." Standing back up, Dominic faced the officers with quiet dignity. "You want to verify our relationship? Let's call my wife right now." He pulled out his phone, his hand steady despite the storm raging inside him. The officers exchanged glances. "Sir, if you could just provide some identification." "I already showed you my driver's license and Theo's school ID card," Dominic replied, his patience wearing thin but his voice remaining measured. 2 decades of microaggressions had taught him the dangers of appearing angry. From across the cafe, the woman who had called the police spoke loudly to another customer. "I'm just being cautious. That child looks nothing like him. Human trafficking is everywhere these days." Dominic closed his eyes briefly. How many times had he heard variations of this? At Theo's preschool, where teachers asked if he was authorized to pick up his own son. At the code playground, where mothers pulled their children closer when he approached. At the pediatrician's office, where new staff questioned whether he had permission to make medical decisions. "Daddy, can I sit with you?" Theo's small voice pulled him back to the present. "Not yet, buddy. The officers need to talk to Daddy first." Dominic forced a smile, though inside he was breaking. His son shouldn't have to witness this. The shorter officer spoke into a radio, requesting verification procedures. Dominic dialed his wife's number. "Vanessa Harper," answered the familiar voice. "Vanessa, I need you to come to the Lakeside Cafe in Central Park now." His voice was steady, but Vanessa had been married to him for 6 years. She knew something was wrong. "Someone called the police. They think I kidnapped our son." The silence lasted exactly 2 seconds. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't say another word without me present." Dominic looked at the officers. "My wife is coming, Vanessa Harper. You can verify everything with her." Recognition flickered in the taller officer's eyes. Vanessa Harper, the renowned pediatric surgeon whose groundbreaking techniques had been featured in medical journals worldwide. But that shouldn't matter. It shouldn't take a prominent white wife to prove he belonged with his own child. While they waited, Dominic's mind drifted to all the moments that had led to this one. Last week at Theo's daycare, when a new teacher had blocked the door, insisting she needed to check with the director before releasing Theo to him. The time at the hospital, when a nurse had asked Theo if he was okay while glancing nervously at Dominic. The department store incident where security followed them through 3 sections because someone thought it was odd that they didn't match. Each incident had chipped away at something inside him. Each time he'd explained calmly, shown identification, proven his right to exist in spaces with his own child. Each time he'd gone home and held Theo a little tighter, wondering how to prepare his son for a world that would question their bond. The woman with the designer handbag grew bolder. I'm just saying, in this day and age, you can't be too careful. Child trafficking is a real problem. I was being a good citizen. Ma'am, Dominic said, turning to face her directly, what exactly made you think I had abducted this child? The woman's cheeks flushed. Well, you don't really look like his father? The cafe was watching now. Some customers had started leaving, uncomfortable with the scene unfolding. 15 minutes later, Vanessa Harper strode into the cafe, her hospital ID still clipped to her blazer. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, her face a mask of controlled fury. What's going on here? She demanded, immediately moving to stand beside Dominic and Theo. The shorter officer explained the situation. A concerned citizen reported suspicious activity. Suspicious activity, Vanessa repeated, her voice like ice. My husband, Dr. Dominic Harper, taking our son for ice cream. That's your suspicious activity? The officer's eyes widened slightly at the title. Vanessa continued, my husband has a PhD in educational psychology from Columbia. He runs the Gifted Children's Program at Riverside Academy. He's published 2 books on childhood development, and you're treating him like a criminal because some random woman decided our family looked wrong to her? Vanessa pulled out her phone. I'm calling our attorney, and then I'm calling the police commissioner, whom I operated on last year, and then I'm calling every news outlet in New York because this ends today. The taller officer looked deeply uncomfortable. The shorter one tried to salvage the situation. Dr. Harper, I understand you're upset, but we were just following protocol. Your protocol is racist, Vanessa said flatly, and you're going to regret implementing it this way. 20 minutes later, the cafe had transformed into something resembling a crime scene, except the only crime was prejudice. Dominic's attorney had arrived, the police captain had arrived, and somehow 2 news crews had set up outside. Dominic sat at a corner table with Theo, trying to shield his son from the chaos while answering the same questions repeatedly. Dr. Harper, the police captain said, his tone respectful, I want to apologize for this misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Dominic looked up. Captain, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was racial profiling, plain and simple. He reached into his messenger bag and pulled out a folder. You want proof that I'm his father? Here's his birth certificate. Here's our family photo from last Christmas. Here's his medical records with my name listed as his biological father. Here's the surrogacy documentation from when we conceived him. The captain's face paled as he flipped through the documents. The surrogacy records were particularly revealing. They showed Dominic's sperm donation, Vanessa's egg donation, and the medical journey that had led to Theo's birth. This is our son, Dominic continued, his voice growing stronger. Biologically, legally, and in every way that matters. I was there when he was born. I've been his father every single day of his life, and you let a stranger's racist assumptions justify treating me like a criminal. Their attorney was taking notes. Dr. Harper, can you walk me through your daily experiences with this kind of discrimination? Dominic looked at Theo, who was drawing on a napkin, pretending not to listen to every word. It happens constantly, Dominic said quietly. At school, they assume I'm a visitor. At medical appointments, they question my authority to make decisions. At the code playground, other parents watch me suspiciously. At stores, security follows us. He paused. I'm not a kidnapper. I'm not a threat. I'm his father. I have 2 advanced degrees. I've dedicated my career to helping children, and I've never done anything to deserve being treated like this. But it happens because people look at us and decide we don't fit their idea of what a family should look like. The attorney nodded, and today, someone decided that a black man couldn't possibly be the father of a light-skinned child. They called armed police officers to investigate you for kidnapping your own son. They traumatized a 4-year-old boy and humiliated his father in public, all because they couldn't imagine that families come in different shades. Vanessa's hand found his. The woman who called this in needs to be held accountable. The police captain shifted uncomfortably. We're looking into that, but the caller has rights too. The caller? Vanessa interrupted. Falsely accused my husband of a felony based on race. That's not exercising rights, that's harassment. Dominic stood up, his composure returning. I want this investigated. I want accountability, And I want assurance that no other family goes through this. He looked around the cafe at the news cameras and the remaining customers. Because this isn't just about us. This is about every multiracial family, every adoptive family, every family that doesn't look like what people expect. We have the right to exist in public without justifying our relationships to strangers. The video went viral within hours. Someone had recorded the entire interaction, from the initial accusation to Vanessa's arrival to Dominic's powerful statement about family and prejudice. By evening, #CentralPark profiling was trending on every social media platform. The woman who'd made the call was identified within hours. Patricia Wellington, 48, finance executive, resident of the Upper East Side. Her LinkedIn profile disappeared, and her company's phone lines were flooded. By the next morning, she'd been placed on administrative leave. But Dominic wasn't focused on revenge. He was focused on healing. "How are you doing, buddy?" he asked Theo as they sat in their kitchen the next morning, scrolling through supportive messages from around the world. "I'm okay, Daddy, but I don't understand why that lady was so mean." Dominic pulled Theo into his lap. "Sometimes people make judgments based on how things look instead of how things really are. That lady saw us together and made assumptions because your skin is lighter than mine. Because I'm white and you're black." The directness of children always took Dominic's breath away. "Yes, son, because of that." "That's silly," Theo said, matter-of-factly. "You're still my daddy." "Always," Dominic promised. Vanessa walked into the kitchen with her tablet. "The interview requests are getting crazy. CNN, Good Morning America, The Today Show, everyone wants to talk to you." Dominic considered this. He'd spent 4 years trying to fly under the radar, trying not to make waves, trying to prove he belonged in every space he entered with his son. Maybe it was time for a different approach. "Set up one interview," he said finally, "something prime time, something that will reach people." 3 days later, Dominic sat across from a national news anchor, Theo sleeping peacefully at home while Vanessa watched from the green room. "Dr. Harper, tell us what happened at that cafe." "What happened was that someone looked at my family and decided we didn't make sense to them. They saw a black man with a white child and jumped to the worst possible conclusion." "How did that make you feel?" "Tired," Dominic said honestly. "I'm tired of proving that I belong with my own son. I'm tired of carrying documentation to verify our relationship. I'm tired of having conversations with my 4-year-old about why strangers question whether I'm his father." The anchor leaned forward. "What would you say to Patricia Wellington if she were watching tonight?" Dominic was quiet for a moment. "I'd say that her call to police traumatized a child and humiliated a family for no reason other than her own discomfort with how we look together. I'd say that being a concerned citizen doesn't mean policing families who don't match your expectations." He paused. "But I'd also say that she has an opportunity now, an opportunity to learn, to grow, to think about the impact of her actions. We all have biases. The question is whether we're willing to examine them and do better." The interview clip was viewed over 15 million times in the first 24 hours. But the story took an unexpected turn the following week. Patricia Wellington requested a meeting with the Harpers. Their attorney advised against it, but Dominic was curious. They agreed to meet at a neutral location with their lawyer present. Patricia arrived alone, looking nothing like the confident woman from the cafe. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her designer clothes replaced by a simple blouse and slacks. "Thank you for meeting with me," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted to apologize in person." Dominic nodded, but said nothing. "What I did was inexcusable," she continued. "But I want you to know why I did it, not as an excuse, but as context." She took a deep breath. 20 years ago, my daughter was abducted by her non-custodial father. They found her 3 years later in another state. She was different, traumatized. She never fully recovered. The room was silent. "I've spent 2 decades seeing threats everywhere," Patricia continued. "I've called the police 6 times on situations that seemed suspicious to me. 5 times I was wrong. Once I was right. They found a missing child. That reinforced my behavior." She looked directly at Dominic. "But I never examined why I found certain situations suspicious and others not." I never questioned why I immediately assumed the worst when I saw you with your son. Dominic leaned forward. Your trauma doesn't excuse racism. No, it doesn't, Patricia agreed. Nothing does. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for an opportunity to make amends. How? Vanessa asked skeptically. Patricia pulled out a folder. I've established a foundation in my daughter's name. It will fund education about racial bias, support for multiracial families, and training for police on how to handle these situations without traumatizing children. She pushed the folder across the table. I'd like you to sit on the board. I want this foundation to be guided by the people most affected by these issues. Dominic and Vanessa exchanged glances. I've also resigned from my position. Patricia continued. I'm going back to school to study child psychology with a focus on trauma. I want to understand how my own trauma led me to traumatize your son. The twist in the story captured public attention even more than the original incident. 6 months later, Dominic stood in front of a room full of educators, social workers, and family advocates at the grand opening of the Family Diversity Resource Center, jointly funded by Patricia's foundation and donations that had poured in after the cafe incident. Families come in all combinations, he told the crowd. Same race, different races, biological, adopted, fostered, blended. What makes a family isn't how we look together, it's how we love together. Theo, now 5, cut the ribbon with oversized scissors, grinning for the cameras. Beside him stood a teenage girl, Patricia's daughter, Emma, who had become an unexpected ally in their work, speaking openly about her own trauma and the importance of not perpetuating cycles of harm. Later, as they drove home, Theo asked, Daddy, are you famous now? Dominic laughed. Not famous, buddy, just someone who spoke up. Will you keep speaking up? As long as I need to. That evening, Vanessa found Dominic in their home office working on his next book. It wasn't about educational psychology, it was about family identity and the courage to exist authentically in a world that often demanded explanation. How's the writing going? She asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Good, different, important. She read over his shoulder. The world looked at us and saw a puzzle that didn't fit together. They couldn't imagine that love comes in different shades, that families are built with hearts rather than matching DNA, that belonging doesn't require resemblance. But we knew who we were. We always knew. I love it, Vanessa said. I love our life, Dominic replied. All of it, even the hard parts. 3 years later, Dominic received the National Civil Rights Award for his work with multiracial families. In his acceptance speech, he said, That day, in the cafe, someone tried to separate me from my son based on how we looked together. What they didn't realize was that love doesn't come with a color chart. Family doesn't require matching pigment, and belonging is something you carry inside yourself, not something others grant you permission to feel. He looked out at the audience, hundreds of people from all kinds of families, to every parent who's been questioned, every child who's been confused, every family that's been told they don't match. You belong, you are enough, you are family, and no one gets to decide that but you. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Later that night, as Dominic tucked 8-year-old Theo into bed, his son asked, Dad, do you ever think about that day at the cafe? Sometimes, Dominic admitted. I'm glad it happened, Theo said. Really? Why? Because now other kids like us know they're not alone, and their daddies know they're not alone either. Theo paused. And because of Emma, she needed us too. Dominic kissed his son's forehead. You're pretty wise for 8 years old. I get it from my dad, Theo said with a sleepy smile. As Dominic turned off the lights, he thought about that terrifying day 3 years ago, the humiliation, the fear, the anger, but also the strength he'd found, the voice he'd discovered, the change he'd helped create, and the unexpected healing that had come from the most unlikely source. The world had tried to judge a father by his skin color and found him lacking, but the truth had made history, and it was just the beginning. Sometimes the most important battles are fought not with fists or weapons, but with dignity, grace, and the unshakable knowledge of who you are. Sometimes, the greatest victories come from simply refusing to be diminished by others' inability to see your worth. And sometimes, standing up for your right to exist changes the world for everyone who comes after you. If Dominic's story touched your heart, share this video with someone who needs to see how racial profiling affects real families every day. Like this video and subscribe for more heartwarming stories of justice.